This is Steve McGrath, and welcome back to Beyond the Helmet. I am so pleased today because I am joined by Chukky Okobi, former Super Bowl, well, I guess always Super Bowl champion, former NFL player, but certainly a guy that is not going to let being an athlete define him. We're going to get into basic instructions right now. But first, Chukky, how are you doing, man?
Hey, every day above ground's a good day. You always got to consider the alternative. So I'm just excited to be here and grateful for this opportunity to share with all of you. And I just got to make a comment real quick of something that caught my eye. Right there over your right shoulder, I see my boy Matt Light in the picture back there. That was my best friend in college, man. We played at Purdue together, and it's just nostalgic to see my boy there on the Zoom screen.
I think I got Mike Tomlin too. I know that he came a little after you, but I certainly have some Steeler love behind me. But I live in the right outside of New England, so I certainly have a big place in my heart for Matt Light and a lot of guys that I've been able to grow up watch playing.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
That, man, I appreciate you taking the time because I had listened to you on Sean Flynn's podcast at Silicon Valley. I have no problem shouting that out because it was a great conversation and certainly helped me get a better understanding of who you are and how you think about things. Because what you do now as a coach for your clients is, I think just what I had heard on that conversation was stuff that anyone can use, put themselves, work themselves to be in a better spot. But I really wanted to get into how you your journey to get to that point through being a pro athlete and a collegiate athlete before that. So because I've hyped it up so much, can we just talk a little bit about basic instruction and what you're doing now?
Yeah, the big thing is most of us are living our life not really knowing what we're doing. And, I'm big on metaphors, and that's what basic instructions is all about. It's about learning how our minds actually function instead of believing that what we're attempting to do in our lives is difficult or hard. Well, yeah, everything's difficult and hard when I don't know how to do it. If no one's giving me instruction on how to do it. I remember cursive was difficult in third grade. Tying my shoes was difficult in kindergarten. Writing my name was difficult before that because I hadn't been given instruction. And so a lot of times the troubles, the challenges that we're dealing with in our careers, our businesses, our relationships, health and fitness, hey, there's a lot of people who have issues with their spirituality in their relationship with their higher power. A lot of that discomfort, the tension, the conflict you feel internally is only there simply because you don't necessarily know how to release it. You don't necessarily understand exactly what's happening. And many of us have this belief that negative emotions are bad. No, it's negative. It's not bad. All emotions are good. You have positive, you have negative, but a lot of times we associate negative emotions with something to avoid. And that is why you feel that way. It's because you feel like, oh, I don't like this. I don't want this. So I need to avoid it. And it's the fight against what's happening that's creating the internal conflict and making it feel like getting your specific desired results as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a parent. That's what's making it feel that way, is because you don't know the basic instructions of how your human mind works. And so what I do is I help founders and entrepreneurs, work with real estate agents, C-level executives to gain control of their mind, master your mind so you can master your life. And, I learned a lot of these, what I do now with neuro-linguistic programming, mental and emotional release, transcendental meditation, and really working with energy. These are all things that I learned along the way. And it really started back when I was at Purdue. As a freshman in college because I was in a situation where I felt like my goal was in jeopardy and I needed to learn something that other people weren't necessarily aware of to gain a competitive advantage as a college football player. And I think it worked out. So.
Well, okay, then. So you're in Purdue. What exactly is going sideways and what exactly did you start doing to get the train back on the tracks?
Well, the big thing is coming out of high school, I only had one scholarship offer, and that was to Purdue University. Now, it's a good offer to get. It's a Big Ten team. Can't complain. Had no complaints. I was actually extremely happy that I actually got an offer. For me, I can only play for one team at a time, so it was mission accomplished once I got that one scholarship. The thing is, because it was only one scholarship, I developed some beliefs about my situation. First, I believed that my head coach at the time, Jim Coletto, was the only coach on earth that thought I was any good. That was a belief. I don't think it was true, but looking at what I knew about the situation at the time that no other school had offered me, I believed that. I believed that Coach Coletto was a main figure. This coach was somebody that was going to play a main role in my journey to the NFL. And then after my first year in which I redshirted, he left. And I freaked out, totally freaked out. I mean, the level of anxiety and fear in this deep insecurity about my position now, I just had what I like to call a by myself meeting, where it's like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do here. How are we going to get to that goal of playing pro football that I always saw in my mind? And I thought about the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, a lot of competition. I got competition within my own team. Everybody's preparing physically to get ready to play football. They're watching film, they're practicing, lifting weights, run, doing all the things you're supposed to do, as am I. So if we're all doing the same thing, my thought process is, how can I get an advantage if I'm just doing what they're doing? And so I went to a used bookstore on campus to find something. I figured if I look through the trash, I'm going to find something that nobody else knows. And I found a book, and the title of the book is The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. And now this book was published back in '86 and is no longer in print. At the time, the title was what really grabbed me, and I planned back on track. I instantly connected with what he was saying. Didn't fully understand at first. All I knew was he said, whatever's in this book, I can use to create my future. And so I bought it, kept it a secret, didn't tell my mom, didn't tell anybody, because that's, by keeping it secret is what gave me an advantage. And long story short, coach came in, Joe Tiller. I was the only freshman starter on that team. That's a freshman class that included Drew Brees. Now, I'm not saying I'm better than Drew Brees, but I'm not saying I'm not better than Drew Brees. I'll let you make the decision on that. So, shout out to Drew Brees, by the way. That's my boy. We've been friends since we were 18, man. I love that dude.
Yeah, hey man, rubbing shoulders with Matt Light and Drew Brees is certainly in some good company.
Yeah, we had a good squad, man. We had a really good squad. There was a lot of us there, obviously, of our little group. You know, Breeze was like Michael Jackson, and we were like Tito and Jermaine. So, as far as Breeze was Mike, and we were just the supporting cast, but we all played our role, and we've had a lot of success. I mean, the guys I played with at Purdue, my offensive line, Ian Allen, Gene Merschkowski, Brandon Gorin, Matt Light, and myself, between us, we got 8 Super Bowl rings. So we had a pretty talented squad. Pretty talented. Good. Yeah.
So for you to take what you read and actually implement it, there obviously has to be a bit of a learning curve, like anyone that's doing anything for the first time. So when you think back to, really it's the beginning of you getting everything moving the way you want it to go, the Purdue experience overall, so just those next 3-4 years, do you recall different things you were trying and tweaking? Are you writing stuff down? Is it, a mantra? Are certain thoughts that you're making yourself think on a daily basis? Do you just remember anything of like how this sort of started, how your routine changed?
The big thing is just recognizing that I don't know what I don't know. So when the first, Tad James book kind of sent me down a rabbit hole. That was the first one, but there was so many after that, so many different CDs. Remember back in the 90s, we were listening to CDs. I was listening to CDs, listening to different seminars, talks, Jim Rohn, a bunch of things all about mental performance and emotional discipline. And so right off the bat, I was really, really connected. I felt a strong connection with NLP and with hypnosis. And so I started to implement a lot of different principles of NLP and hypnosis into what I was doing as a college athlete. In addition, college life can be multifaceted. So I used NLP and hypnosis in terms of academics. I used it socially. I used it in any way, shape, an advantage depending on the context, whether it was I'm just looking to get a girl's phone number, I was looking to remember a bunch of facts and periodic table, and I was able to use all these things to take control of my mind to get my desired result. With the grade, we win the game. Whatever the result I want is, I was able to create those results utilizing the energy and the resources I have inside. And so, yeah, just to, you mentioned the mantra. There was a mantra that I came up with back in all the time, and I used it through professional sports and in certain contexts. I still use it now. And that mantra is: the mind commands, the body obeys. The mind commands, the body obeys. So anything I do, any words I speak, any physical activity or move that I perform on the football field, it all started in here. It all started in the mind. And so if I'm not aligned inside, what can I expect to produce in my external world? And so a lot of times when people are struggling, they can't quite figure out what's wrong, why certain things trigger them and piss them off, what's blocking me from being who I want to be or doing what I want to do or having what I want to have. It's all about what's going on in our minds. And most people have zero idea of what's going on internally and why their life feels the way it does. And so once you start to understand, and Dr. Tad James and his son and my mentor, Dr. Matt James, have really put me in touch with the fact that our whole entire world is in our mind. It's not out there. It's not out there. It's inside. So even as we're sitting here talking on Zoom and you see the computer outside of yourself, you recognize what you're seeing is not outside. It's inside. It's simply information, sensory information you're taking in through your optic nerve. The information is coming in through the retina and is being interpreted in the mind, and then it creates a picture in your mind of a computer. But a lot of times we feel like it's all out there. And so difficulties in your business, in your relationships, in your health and fitness, whatever might be going on, the initial inclination of most people is to start changing things out there. Start seeing what I can do out here. Oh, this my girlfriend's mad at me. What can I text her to fix how I feel right now? What's going on with this person? What's going on? That we're constantly externally focused. That's where you're messing up, because your whole world is not out there. It's in here. And if I can, what I got from that book from Tad James, and I don't believe it said this directly, but it was my interpretation, was that your whole entire world is in your mind. It's simply a composite of sensory data you took in through your nerves, which are in your physical body. There's nerves everywhere, right? So we take in the information, what we smell and what we taste, but since we're not dogs, more significantly, what we hear, what we see, and what we feel. All of that's just sensory information we take in through the nerves and then interpret it in the mind. So it's like we just collect it, boom, it goes up to the hard drive, and we make sense of what's going on. It creates an internal representation in your mind of what you believe is happening outside of you. But recognize that whatever you say is happening is simply your individual interpretation. It's not necessarily true. So essentially, whatever data I take in about my environment, I get to decide what story to tell about what's happening. And so once I got this this idea, I started to tell different stories about whatever I was experiencing, because there's nobody else in my mind but me. So who's going to argue it? And sometimes when you're in the middle of a crisis, it might actually be the best thing that's happening. But again, because you feel negative emotions, you believe what's happening is something to avoid. And that's where a lot of times, how many times have people, you go back to like 2008, with the mortgage market crashed and people were losing all kinds of money. How many people panicked and just started selling their real estate, selling all their stuff? And then somebody else was like, this moment will pass. I'm going to be able to buy a bunch of stuff cheap. And they bought up all the stuff that all the panicking people were liquidating. And all those people that liquidated everything are sitting here like, damn, I wish I didn't do that. Well, because you didn't know how your mind works, you were malfunctioning essentially at that time. You know, emotions, the negative emotions, if we don't understand them, they will dictate our behaviors, our beliefs about what's possible, and our mental and emotional state. And all of a sudden, life feels like crap. And it's simply because of the story you're telling yourself.
I've recently had the epiphany, and I attributed a lot to conversations like this that I feel extremely privileged to be able to have, and I'm overjoyed to share it. That we are nothing more than a collection of stories that we tell ourselves. And if you are haphazardly moving through life and you're just sort of collecting these stories that maybe it's something that your parents had said to you when you were younger, an interaction here or there, but you just start to amass these stories over time for who you are and how the world is, that you quickly find that you have defined everything without even being intentional about it. So and I don't think that that necessarily applies to someone that's a founder or C-level executive, because they are high achievers just by being in that role. I think that the average person, though, very easily can succumb to telling themselves bad stories and just setting an expectation of what that life will be without ever giving them a chance to really fight to see what they can do.
Yeah, you know, you'd be surprised that, you know, founders, CEOs, they're fighting the same battles. A lot of the times, the things that they're triggered by, the things that make them feel negative about, are just different than what somebody else would, but the emotion's the same. So a lot of times we're telling ourselves stories, especially in a professional setting, about what we don't want to happen. Like, well, I just don't want this to happen. I just don't want to take this loss. I just don't want to miss this opportunity. And the issue is the way the mind works. You should never ever. It's actually very detrimental and it's hurting you. Every time you bring it to mind, it hurts. And it really goes back to the way the human mind works, which is the very concept for an organism, the human mind, that has many complex functions. But it's pretty simple the way it works. We A lot of us have heard the idea that we only use 10% of our brain power. You've probably heard that before, right? It's false. Like, it can't be more false. I can't think of anything more false than that. We as human beings use 100% of our minds. You are conscious of about 10%. There's so many things that your unconscious mind is doing for you, or subconscious if you prefer that term, but your unconscious does so many things for you that you're not aware of. And so imagine your unconscious mind is like a 4-year-old version of you, like a little version before you've had all this life experience, before we had all the stories, just the pure you, right? And so that subconscious or your unconscious is like your pet, it's like your dog, but you're 4 years old, so you're a little guy. You know, you're not this big as strong as you think you are because you're 4 and you've got a vivid imagination, but you're really just a really small, you're not very physically powerful human being. In their dog, your unconscious mind is like a 180-pound Great Dane. So it's much bigger and stronger than you are. So recognize that if you're the human, you have the leash, you're in charge. And that's your conscious mind. That's the part of your mind that you engage in your everyday waking state. So when you're talking to yourself, that's all happening. It's all conscious. Anything you're conscious of, that's conscious mind. The unconscious is in charge of everything else. So think about this as we sit here and have this conversation. What exactly is keeping my heart beating? How do my eyes keep blinking? You know, how do I continue to breathe rhythmically and regularly? Because we can all agree that none of us are actively conscious or controlling those functions. That's the job of the unconscious mind. It's your best friend. It's keeping you alive. So, because it's 90% of your brain power, it's got to handle any function that you can't. There's a lot of functions it handles that you don't even know exist. But the most pertinent thing is the unconscious mind is where we store our emotions in the part of your mind that you're not aware of. So, you know, even just to tie this back into football, in my story, you know, after you go back to the 2005 season when we won the Super Bowl, you know, we were the first 6 seed in the NFL to win the Super Bowl, you know, took the bus home to Detroit. And most people, everyone remembers, if you go and look on Wikipedia, you can see who won the Super Bowl every single year. But people don't remember the story because the year before was Ben's rookie year. And we won 15-1, lost to New England in the AFC Championship. And so going into that '05 season, we were the favorites to win the Super Bowl because we had won like 14 straight games the season before. And all of a sudden in '05, we lost 3 games in a row in the middle of the season. And if we lost one more, we were out of the playoffs. So we were kind of confused. People didn't know what to think, how to feel. And Coach Cowher sensed this. So he comes in to the team meeting after we lost that 3rd game to Baltimore. And he says, guys, you don't know what you don't know. And think about this. It's what you don't know that you don't know that's actually running the show right now. And so, since you don't know what you don't know, think about this. How do you know what you think you do know is right? Don't answer me. Just sit, relax, and contemplate this for a minute. You don't know what you don't know. And what I took from that is he's talking about the unconscious mind. He's talking about your emotions. He's talking about what is it that you're thinking or feeling right now that then becomes the filter through which you approach this situation. If at that deeper level in your unconscious mind that you're not aware of the functions, if you're holding on to fear, if you're thinking, if you're feeling guilt, if you're thinking, oh, maybe we're not good enough, then that's what's going to dictate what happens next. And so, again, if you don't have the emotional discipline to recognize these things as they're happening, making the adjustments you need to keep your plan of being champions on track, well, then the dog is going to run the day. The unconscious mind is going to dictate what happens. And in the end, after whatever happened in that '05 season, this is the way I saw it. We're going to have a story regardless. What's that story going to be about how we overcame those 3 losses in the season and made it happen in the end and became champions? Or it's going to be a story about, oh, if he would have done this, if he wouldn't have done that, if he wouldn't have fumbled, if he would have called better play, and that is, so you get to choose right now simply by taking control of what's going on inside, telling yourself that empowering story now before you've even done it. You've got to believe it before you can go do it. That's the only thing that's going to give us a chance, because after losing 3 games, we still had 5 games left in the regular season. So the playoffs started right then and right now. Because if you lose one more game, it's over. How are you going to go into that situation that you have 0% as your margin for error and you're racked with fear? How is this going to go?
So a lot of what you have said has been very on a one-on-one level. What did you do? What should anyone do in similar situations? But to take the context of your story and take it one step further back, I'm pretty sure it's that prior year that it's only a 6-win season. So when you start now to look at year to year, the Steelers, man, I mean, one of the best run sports organizations that's ever existed. What was it about, if you can put your finger on anything, ownership from the Rooney family, Coach Cowher, down to the coaching staff, the veterans on the team, how does a team, an organization go from, I think when you're drafted, you guys are like a 13-win team. So you see performance has slipped drastically. And of course, Ben Roethlisberger comes in. The players, the people are I'd imagine the biggest component of the equation. But how do you go from slipping to 2 years later, seeing adversity again, maybe in a much smaller form, not a bad season, but a bad 3-game stretch, to then get back on the road again? Is there anything that you can say that good leaders do to get through tougher times?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest example is exactly what Coach Cowher came in and told us, is that he understands that we are all energetic beings as human beings. And that the emotions are the energy. Think about it. It's energy in motion, emotion. So again, it's about getting us our emotions and our conscious minds are that sets the goals of being champions is we got to get them aligned because the emotion that we're feeling in that moment when we lost 3 straight games, it's not aligned with the goal. That energy is not going to get us there. So he understood that we have to get people to remain calm and focused. And so understand, they said, okay, if you lose one more game, you're out. But recognize everything on earth is a dichotomy. You have man, you have woman. You've got day, you've got night, you've got hot, you've got cold, you've got black, you've got white. You see things like black and white is separate, but you recognize how can you even define white without black? So you realize now they're both one thing. So when you tell me, oh, if you lose one more game, you're out, what does that mean? If you win every game, you're champs. One thing. And when you're in that negative space, you're feeling fear, you're feeling guilt, you're feeling insecure, you tend to focus on the side of the dichotomy consistent with that emotion. So then the story becomes if we lose one more game, if we lose one more game, if we lose one more. Is remember the little kid and the dog. The dog doesn't understand negatives. So what you keep saying, if we lose one more game, if we lose one more game, if we lose one more game, all the dog heard was, hey, lose one more game, do it. That's what the dog heard because that's what you keep saying. So it's important to that the head coach who was hired by it's all a cultural thing. The Rooneys get it. They understand people and they understand how to connect with people that align with their culture, the way that they think, the way that they operate, so that we can be aligned from the top, from Kevin Colbert at the top, all the way down to the last dude on practice squad. We're all vibrating at that same energy level. And to me, it's every part of the organization, everybody. And that's why, I know in Pittsburgh, I can't speak for any other team, but when we won the Super Bowl, everybody gets a ring. If you work in the cafeteria, you get a ring. You clean up the bathroom whenever he leaves, you get a ring. Because everyone plays their part. And we all have to be doing whatever our responsibility is in that energy, that Super Bowl level energy. And that comes from the Rooneys all the way down.
I'm obviously an outsider, but I don't hear anyone talk like you do when it comes to NLP, energy, just the way that you think through things. I mean, was there anyone? Now, of course, you read a lot. There's a lot of outside sources, but in the sports world, is there anyone that actually talked to you in these terms?
Yes, 2 people. And they're both coaches I had at Purdue. First is Joe Tiller, who's our head coach that came in '97, and Danny Hope, who was the head coach at Purdue in 2008. But before that, he was our offensive line coach. And I had such a really strong relationship with Coach Hope. I grew up, my dad wasn't really around. I mean, I knew my dad. It's not like, oh, I didn't know who he was, but my parents split. We moved around all the time. He just wasn't really around like that. So what I did, a lot of people are like, well, I didn't have a father figure. It's on you to go find him. And so even at age 10, 11, 12, I would find my father figures and I found them through sports. And nobody was more of a father figure to me in my life, period, than Danny Hope. And he had such a unique perspective on things, and he would tell a lot of metaphors. He had more stories than anyone I've ever known, and a lot of the lessons I learned through just having these, you know, father son type conversations. And so he would always see things in a more what I call a press box view, where he's always looking at things from the whole picture as opposed to just getting down to the details. And from having him be that main influence for those years between age 18 to 22, it helped me to develop that way of seeing things. And, you know, it's just like football. Like I always talk about this when I do keynotes and when I do corporate trainings is, I played center. So just imagine I'm playing in Seattle. I'm in CenturyLink Field, 68,000 people, neon green and blue everywhere. People going screaming. I can't hear because I'm on the other team and they're on defense. So it's loud. I walk up to the line of scrimmage. I got this fire breathing defensive tackle in front of me, right? Chris Jones or like Cam Hayward, right here, fire breather. I can see him because he's right here where I'm focused. The middle linebacker, Bobby Wagner, he might be to the left or to the right a little bit, but I can see him because he's right here where I'm focusing. The safeties, they're walking around. They think they're disguising things, but Quandre Diggs, I can see him right there because my focus is right here. But in this moment, when I'm down on the line of scrimmage, there's a lot of things happening around me I can't see. Like, for example, we broke the huddle, receiver went right. I'm assuming a defender went with him, but I can't see him because my focus is right here. Are the backs lined up properly? I have no idea. I know the formation. I know we practiced this, but I can't see them because they're behind me and my focus is here. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I've done my job perfectly, completely eliminated my man. And I'm sitting here like, I don't understand. I did everything right. Why isn't this working? Because when you're on the line of scrimmage, you can only deal with what you're dealing with. There's only one place in the stadium you can see everything. It's the press box. That's why there's a coach up there. So anytime you've seen that quarterback on the sideline on the phone, or you might see him have a headset on, he's talking to the coach in the press box, saying, hey, this is difficult. It feels like they got 25 defenders. What's going on? And the coach in the press box says, calm down. Let me explain to you the big picture so that we can make adjustments and get this ball in the end zone the next time. So we're always, most of the time, looking at our lives. Every single, I don't care what job you do, you are on the line of scrimmage of your life. There's no way you could possibly know all the things that are factoring into your result. There's no way. You cannot be on the field and in the press box at the same time. Now, that's where all of us, especially startup founders who have big goals and dreams of what they'd like to accomplish and don't necessarily know how to get their desired result, how to get that ball in the end zone. It seems so difficult to get my funding. It seems so difficult to get people to buy into my idea. Well, that's because you're on the line of scrimmage, so it just feels that way from your perspective. But working with a coach who's able to give you that broader picture, to point out the places where you can do things differently to get a different result. Otherwise, how would you know? Because every second of your life, you're down on the field. And so that's why I feel like everybody needs a coach. And Coach Hope and Coach Tiller, they were both able to kind of give me a broader perspective of life and where what we were doing as individuals playing college football and what we were doing as a team and what it meant to the community and what we were doing as a team and what it meant to the national landscape of college football. All of a sudden, the decisions you make as an individual become much, much more educated, understanding the impact of what I do every single day and the impact it's going to have on my lives and the lives of those that rely on and look up to me. And so that's where, Coach Tiller and Coach Hope really, really gave me a different perspective as a man in how to find success consistently.
That's awesome. It's really powerful. And I actually, it's coming back to me now. I think when I was speaking to Aiken Adele, he was going on about Coach Tiller.
Yep, that's another guy. He's another cast member in our movie, and Aiken, that's my guy. I love him, and Coach Tiller, the big thing with Coach Tiller is he liked to play mind games. He was always about messing with you up here to get you to understand, to come to the conclusion on your own as to what you need to do. It's interesting when, we lost the coach and I went crazy and started learning all this mental performance stuff. and Coach Tiller came, he would constantly, I always saw him reading books that had nothing to do with football. And I'm like, doesn't he have any other work to do? He's in charge of this whole thing. But he's constantly reading mindset things, psychology things. And then, looking back, I can see how he integrated into his day to day, but not necessarily directly. He wasn't preaching. He was just integrating those things into his life and the way he behaved. Now, as we're all looking at him as the leader, most people don't recognize, and this is something that Coach Tiller got, is the world is just a mirror. So think about it. You ever walk down the street and smile at somebody and they smile back? It's a mirror. But what most people don't recognize is that we mirror the seen and unseen in one another. So if Coach Tiller's the leader and we're all looking at him, he wants his team to reflect him. And so the best way to get people to follow you, best way to get people to get on your page to operate at the same emotional vibration is you got to embody it. And he got that. He got it. It's like he hires assistant coaches. I'm going to let them coach. I hired them to do a job. Some coaches are always, kind of one-upping their subordinates. Always in there like, I know what to do. I'm like, stop. Coach Tiller, step back and say, I hired Danny Hope to coach online. I'm going to let him coach the online. And I used to mess with Coach Tiller back in college where he would say something to me and I'd be like, man, you're not my coach. That's my coach over there. And he's like, yeah, but I coach your coach. And I said, okay, you win, but it's really about, getting out of your own story, your own predicament, understanding that you are just on the line of scrimmage of your own life. And that the only reason it feels so tough is because I don't know what I don't know. And having a coach in the press box of my life, my business, my professional journey, you can see the benefits. You can see the benefits because there's no way I can see the whole field. It's impossible.
I mean, you've said that there's so much of what you've said that are what I feel can be pretty easily identifiable, actionable steps that anyone could take it and start to at least think about things differently. But as we get toward the end here, do you have a couple of just easy go-to things, just tips, if you will, for?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is a perfect segue into the actual basic instruction. It's very simple. How do I become empowered to create my specific desired results? There's 4 basic instructions. They must be followed in order and none of them can be left out. Otherwise, somewhere down the line, things will get complicated. So the basic instructions are in order. Basic instruction number 1, let go of the past. Let go of the past. Now, what that means is we talked about that unconscious mind and how we store our emotions there in the place where we don't know what we don't know. We're not consciously aware of those functions. But those negative emotions, all the pain from the past, all the things in the past that happened that created negative emotions for you, those things are still trapped in there. And they're creating a filter through which you see your world. So every time you got picked last for dodgeball in elementary school, you collect negative emotion in there, what I like to call a black bag. So you collect one of these black bags, right? Then, time goes on, you got made fun of, the whole cafeteria is laughing at you. That hurts, you feel embarrassed. Black bag, here you go, keep that. Every time something happens, you got, you got made fun of on the school bus. You got stood up for a date. You didn't get into the college you wanted to. You got divorced. All of those things have negative emotions attached, and people don't necessarily know how to release them. So they collect a bunch of these black bags until they become a giant duffel bag full of negative emotion. And you're wondering why, if you feel like you're walking through mud trying to get to your goal. First thing you got to do is put those bags down. Whatever you believe that you're not, whatever you believe you can't, whatever thing that you're thinking about that you don't want, all of that's got to go. You can't, whatever got you here is not going to get you where you want to go. So we got to let go of all those old strategies and beliefs. Basic instruction number 1, let go of the past. And this is my specialty. In 5 to 8 hours, all of the guilt, sadness, fear, anger, what's it? Anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt. Those are the 5 main negative emotions. Any other word's going to fall under one of those headings. And then we also have those limiting beliefs. I can't, I'm not, I don't want. Those are conversations that people have spinning in their head, obsessing about it over and over like a vinyl record. That's the past we got to let go of. And through a cutting edge psychology application called mental and emotional release, all of that hurt from your entire life, because that's how strong the unconscious mind is every emotion you've ever had is still in there. All of that from your whole life through basic instructions, mental and emotional release in that application, we can get rid of all of it in about 5 to 8 hours. Gone. You have a totally new, profound sense of clarity. So a lot of times people have been focusing on the negative their whole life. After a breakthrough session, mental and emotional release, clean out all that baggage, we go from focusing on the negative to back to neutral. We got to clean the slate. We got to empty. We got to take the trash out. So we're dealing with a empty and ready vessel, ready to be filled with the right emotions and the right strategies. So basic instruction number one, let go of the past. Basic instruction number two, now that we've let go of the past and we're thinking clearly, finally, we're feeling good, and all that's left is the positive emotions. Now, basic instruction number two, decide on your specific desired outcome. You don't want to make this decision before you let go of the past, because then you'll be making the decision through the filter of those emotions. We want to make an actual choice of what we genuinely 100% desire to have, be, or do. So basic instruction number two, deciding your specific desired outcome. I moved away as a kid from Pittsburgh and went to 6 schools before high school. And so I never really fit in. You know, I'm first generation American. My parents are from Nigeria. So even when I was around all Black kids, I still didn't really fit in. And so I always wanted to just go home. And I kept that desire in my mind my whole life. I just want to go back to Pittsburgh. I just want to go back to Pittsburgh. And my parents were always fighting at home and things were a little tough. So I didn't really feel good. My self-esteem wasn't that great. I didn't feel that great about myself, except when I was playing sports. So I had this idea when I was 7, if I could just do that the rest of my life, I could feel this good about myself and I could really enjoy life. Of course, I was 7, so I thought I could play forever. But those two main goals, go home, go pro. It's pretty specific, right? Following the basic instructions enabled me to do it at the same time on the same day. When I got drafted by the Steelers, I made both of those things happen because I was specific about what I wanted. So sometimes people say, oh, I just want some more money. And I'm like, it's 50 cents. And they're like, oh, well, that's not what I meant. I said, you got to be specific, man. Tell me what you want. So instruction number two is now, boom, we set the goal. And setting goals the way I do it when I work with people, it can't just be a number of pounds to lose or dollars to earn. It's got to be deeper than that. It's all about what if I want $1 million and say, okay, I got $1 million. The question you got to ask is, what am I going to feel when I get it? That's the goal. Is what's happening inside when I achieve this goal. What am I going to see? Who am I going to see? Who's celebrating with me? What are they saying to me? What am I hearing? What am I saying to myself now that I've got my goal? Once you have that picture, it's just like I used to say to our O-line, because, you know, Matt Light was the main guy. That was our best player on the O-line. But I was the heartbeat. I was the guy, the first guy to fight, the last guy to run from a fight, the one that was talking the most. And so I saw myself as a spiritual leader. Probably not the word I would have used back then, but that's the way I saw myself with that group. And we used to get together on the sideline before we played every game. And I would say, listen, look around. Everybody's here to see Drew, but they're going to see us today. I hope the middle linebacker's mom is not in the stands because he's going to get embarrassed. I don't want her to see this. Okay. Chris Berman's going to be talking about us on SportsCenter. Can you guys see it? They'd be like, yeah. And I said, I don't believe you. Close your eyes. Can you see it? Can you see we're the greatest offensive line that ever lived? And they say, yeah. So can you see it? They say, yeah. And I said, if you can see it, then let's go be it. You got to see it first. So that's basic instruction number two. What's the specific desired outcome today? Basic instruction number three. Now that I'm free, I feel good, feel light, I know exactly what I want. Now, basic instruction number three, take the necessary actions to achieve your desired result. Again, if you don't know exactly what you want, how do you know exactly what to do? It's basic instructions. Plus, if you don't know exactly what you want and you're working every day, I got a quote. My favorite quote of all times is Don Harold. He was a cartoonist, wrote in a bunch of different newspapers around America, early 20th century. Greatest quote ever. He said, "Unhappiness is not knowing what you want and killing yourself to get it." How many people are doing that every day? I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Like, no, no, no. I'll be busy as long as I'm making the necessary actions that are going to get me where I want to go. So that's basic instruction number 3. Now we've let go of the past. Basic instruction 1, we know exactly what we want. Basic instruction 2, we know the necessary actions and we're ready and willing to take them. Basic instruction number 3. All that's left is number 4, which is focus until. And I imagine a lot of people are wondering, focus until what? Focus until you are living specific desired result. Now, depending on what you want to create, it might take 5 years, it might take 5 decades, it might take 5 generations. I don't know. It all depends on what you choose at number 2. However, regardless of the amount of time, you have to decide within yourself, can I focus until? I decided I want to play pro at age 7. I didn't go pro till age 22. 15 years. I had to focus until. And so again, no matter what you can apply this to any context. A lot of people might be thinking, but that's that's pretty ambiguous. That's it's for you to decide. Number 1, let go of the past. You need to determine what you need to let go of. I can't tell you that. Basic instruction number 2. I don't know what this outcome you desire. I don't know. You do. Basic instruction number 3. How can I tell you what to do when I don't know what you need to let go of or what you want? So that's why the structure of what we do is basic. It's basic, simple. It's a lot like The Wizard of Oz. And without getting into the whole story, since I'm going to just presume everyone's seen this movie, even though I live here in Kansas and I've met people that haven't. Isn't that strange? But anyway, Dorothy thought she was in a crisis, right? She asked everyone else, who can help me? Who can save me? Who can make things right? Who can make me feel positive? Go see the wizard, follow the Yellow Brick Road. If anybody has what you need, this is the guy. I'm telling you, he can get you anything you want. So she goes down the Yellow Brick Road, believing she needs somebody else to save her. She met those 3 characters. One doesn't think he's smart enough. One doesn't think he's tough enough. One doesn't think he's brave enough. So with these 3, they all head down the Yellow Brick Road, get all the way to the wizard, only to find out what? There's no wizard. Dorothy, you want to go home? You want that specific desired result? It's on you. You're going to have to figure it out and get it for yourself. So she's like, well, what am I going to do? Why is this so hard? But remember, that ugly lady at the beginning that was being mean to her, right? She was focused on the shoes. Why? Because she knew that that's where the power is. And nobody had the shoes but Dorothy. So nobody can get her home but Dorothy. And what she needed were the basic instructions. Follow keyboard. I just gave you those 4 basic instructions. Click 3 times and go home.
Chucky, can't thank you enough, man. It's been a real pleasure. I don't think that there's any other way to end it other than where can everyone follow you? Well, how can people reach out?
LinkedIn is always the best move. The website is basicinstructions.com. That's instructions pluralized with an S at the end. So basicinstructions.com is the website. I'm on every social media platform because that's the world we live in today. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, even Clubhouse. I haven't really used Clubhouse to this point, but I am there. So whatever your favorite social media outlet is, you can reach me there. Direct messages. I don't have a marketing person. It comes right to me. So if anybody who wants to reach out to me, talk to me. LinkedIn is always the best move. Working with founders and executives, that's where those people congregate. So I'm there most of the time. Basicinstructions.com and look me up on LinkedIn.
There it is. Chukky Okobi, thank you so much for taking the time, man.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm looking forward to, maybe showing up in a season or 2 from now. We do this again.